Hi, I'm Jim Knotts, President and CEO of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund. Welcome to today's virtual reading of the names. 2022 marks the 40th anniversary of the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. As part of our commemoration, we'll host an in-person reading of the names at the wall from November 7th through 10th, 2022, when all 58,281 names on the wall will be read aloud. In the lead up to that event, we'll be reading names each day online while sharing the photos of these heroes. For our daily virtual reading, the names of the service members will be read by month and day of death between the years 1956 and 1975 in alphabetical order for the given day. We apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. Know that our readers are doing their best to honor these service members. We hope you'll listen and watch each day and share with others as we remember and honor those who gave their lives during the Vietnam War.
Charles Edward Alston, George Donald Anderson, James Barton Anderson, Charles R. Ashley Jr., Jesus V. Avila, Stephen Clark Barrett, Roy Claude Beasley, Joseph Lopez Badala, Paul M. Bell, Richard Roy Bellwood, Anderson Don Bolton, Lawrence Gabe Borquez, Joe Roscoe Boswell, Robert Carlos Bowman, Alan Lee Bracken, Monty D. Brooks, Johnny Lee Brown, Merrill Eugene Brumley Jr., Clifford Edward Bryan, Gary Ray Bryant, David E. Burks, John Andrew Brazawa Jr., Annabelle Sylvania Cabral Jr., Raymond M. Caswell, Sanford Close Jr., James Preston Coates, Brian Daly Conlon Jr., Jerome Connor, James Randall Copeland, Jack Patrick Cottrell, William Owen Creech Jr., Harry Richard Crumley, Roland K. Davis, Joseph DeGennaro, Bruce Edward Derenwater, William Charles Deffer, Thomas Edward Denhoff, Billy Clarence DeWeese, Gerald Glenn Duville, David Paul Dodson, Eugene Doy Stoller, Roberto Dominiquez, Arthur Edmund Donovan, Kenneth Harold Dressel, Joshua Way Eason, Dean Joseph Alecko, Archie Merle Ellison, Charles Linwood Eschbach, Norman Roy Everett, Christian Franz Veit III, Bruce James Fletcher, John Joseph Fodden, John Joseph Fogarty III, Kenneth Frierson, David Lewis Gallen, Benjamin Garcia, Philip Eugene Garver, Francis Gary Gertz Jr., Samuel Pukiakal Gifford, Ralph Lewis Glover, Juan E. Gonzalez, Oscar Cruz Gonzalez, Arthur Charles Grange, Donald Ross Gribbler,
William E. Guzman III, Reynaldo Guzman, Edward Clarence Hanley, Ronald David Heck, Edward William Hefner, Jerome Harrington, John Donald Hedderly Sr., Woody Lee Hicks, Radford Douglas Hogan, Dennis Allen Holzheimer, Barry Vorath Hopper, W.D. Hubbard, David Hunter, Emil Jackson Jr., Joseph James, Walter Boyce Johnson, Ralph Edward Johnson, Robert Lamar Johnson, James Bruce Jones, George Edward Jones Jr., Steve Eugene Jordan, Joseph Allen Kelnhofer, Stephen Tracy Keel, Edward Y. C. Kim, Robert Henry King, Woodrow Wilson King Jr., Arthur John Cloband Jr., Harvey Edward Klein II, Thomas James Kordosky, Robert Allen Kowalski, Wencelio Cullion, Robert Candler Langford, Robert Malcolm Langslow, Roger Manet Lay, Ray Douglas Ledford, Edward N. Leonard, Fernando Leonard Lozano, James Alfred Lucky, Earl Adelbert Mailloux, Harold Van Mann, Jr., Dwayne Joseph Markeffa, Ronald Alton Marsh, Joseph Lynn Meade, Daniel Gary Meshling, Ronald David Melton, Jeff Miller, Johnson Marcus Milligan, Johnny Ray Mills, Donald Thomas Mitchell, Julius William Morris, Jr., Jackie Lee Morrison, John Maurice Myers, Gordon E. Myers, Alvin Ray Narcissus, Peter Gary Nash, Clifford Lee Newberry, Victor P. San Nicholas, Bobby Eldon Nolan, James Patrick O'Donnell, Bruce Donald Oakes, Raymond Felix Ortega, Jr., Steve Wilson Page, Stephen Mark Pashman, Henry Palsy,
William Joseph Phillips, Roger Lee Pierce, Carl John Pruce, Ulysses Grant Queener, Jr., David Walter Reimer, James Patrick Riggins, Robert Gene Rogers, Michael Stephen Romano, J. D. Rumsey, Eric Sackett, Joseph Michael Schmolke, Craig Stephen Shelton, Mitchell Frank Silvers, Frederick Augustus Sims, Edward Bruce Smith, Dennis Wayne Smith, Frank Donald Smitherman, Frank J. Summers, George Thomas Spillers, Wilbur Thomas Stair, Eugene C. Summers, Jack B. Sutvin, Jerry Wayne Talley, Robert Tiller, Norman Lee Tinker, Kenneth Robert Trier, Westoval Venable, Roger Lee Vickers, James Vincent Vinciguerra, Arnold Brian Wallace, John Frederick Warmbrot, George Raymond Washington, Michael John Welch, Vernon Michael Wiggins, Lawrence Dean Williams, Leonard Williams, Frank Wayne Williams, Jr., Harold Eugene Willis, Charles Minor Woodall, Jr., Richard Duane Yahtzee.